Special meeting for City Council, Tuesday, August 29th, 2023. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilmember Harmon not present. Councilmember Friedman?
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez not present. Mayor Rouse?
Here.
Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez not present. Councilmember Snedden?
Here.
Councilmember Jordan?
Here. And you have an item to read, please.
Yes. Item 1, public employment recruitment as described in agenda item number 1.
Thank you. Ms. Levy.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. I have a brief presentation for you today to talk about the recruitment for the city administrator. The agenda today is to go over the role of the city administrator, the approaches for the recruitment, the establishment of an ad hoc committee, to talk about a recruiting agency, who does what during the recruitment process, the timeline involved in all of these activities, and then a final recommendation. First of all, the role of the city administrator, in addition to providing the overall management of operations of the city, is a key force in setting direction and tone for the city. It binds the community to city operations. It's also one of the two positions that is hired by and serves at the pleasure of the city council. So it is a highly important decision for city council. We have a couple of options for recruitment. One is to conduct this recruitment in-house, and one is to retain an executive recruiting agency, which, from my perspective, I'm recommending Peckham and McKinney. The reason why I would recommend an outside recruiting agency is A, employee workload at this time, B, the outsourcing and connections that an outside recruiter has, the objectivity that an outside recruiter would provide, and then the assistance throughout that process. So again, I'm recommending that we retain an outside recruiter that specializes in local government. We'll also have to talk about an ad hoc committee, and the purpose of this committee is to work as a go-between between human resources and the recruiter on all of the recruitment coordination, the steps involved, and the selection process. And in the past, this has been the mayor and the mayor pro tem. As I talked about, Peckham and McKinney as the recruiting agency, they come highly recommended, and they have also done several recruitments for us in the past. So we know they're a very good organization. They brought us some key positions. They have 30 years in the business. The recruiter himself, Tony Dollarbrook, is actually a city administrator, so he has really good connections, and his response times and their responsiveness overall has been excellent for us in the past. So as far as the roles that we each play throughout the recruitment for human resources, we coordinate the process and are also a resource for salary information, rules and guidelines related to the recruitment. We can provide information and also establish communication for the council and for the recruiter, so act as that go-between. Peckham and McKinney will oversee all of the recruitment activities, and we'll also work through HR and the ad hoc committee to try to finalize details about the selection process and communicate with the applicants and usher them all through. The city council, each of you will meet with a recruiter to talk about the qualities that are important to you in the next city administrator, to talk about your ideal candidate, some of the challenges or positives the city is experiencing right now and what you'd like to see. And then also you would be part of that selection process. As far as the timeline, there are many activities involved with the recruitment process. First of all, we're starting right now with this project organization, kind of seeing what we need to do in the next 14, 16, 18 weeks. It involves developing a candidate profile, and that means that in addition to speaking with you, the recruiter would go out and talk to key stakeholders, talk to internal stakeholders such as department heads, and really try to get a flavor and temperature of the city and what they're looking for. Next, we would post the recruitment. And that's a period of about 4 to 6 weeks. They would be looking through the candidate applications at that time. And then once they have looked through those applications, for those that really are best suited for the city based on their qualifications, they would send them some supplemental questions. And once those come back, they will do a final selection process, which includes things like phone calls and interviews. That final candidate portfolio would come to the selection committee, and then we would establish the recruitment interviews, and after that, of course, the selection and negotiation for the position would occur. And of course, the final step is just the reference check and qualification check. So that period takes about 16 weeks, and of course, we want to allow for time if there is moving and relocation involved, leaving a prior job. So all of those time components are taken into consideration. So I have 2 actions for you. One is the approach for the recruitment. My recommendation is that we retain an outside recruiter, Peckham and McKinney, for this process. And the other is to establish an ad hoc committee who will work with me and with the recruiter throughout the selection process. And with that, I welcome any questions or thoughts.
Just if you have one quick question on having been familiar with this, we did this with Paul Casey before, and we had a recruiter as well as like an interview team. A lot of them were people that knew the community or were from the community and all that. Would that be what you're proposing as well in this situation?
Absolutely.
know,
So
if we-
in developing the qualities, you want to get as many people involved in that process so that you get a really good understanding of what to post, what you're looking for in the recruitment brochure. And secondly, for the interview process, I would recommend multiple panels for a position of this nature to make sure that you have an external kind of vision for that, as well as an internal kind of soft skill.
Yeah, very good. Ms. Ned?
Thank you, Mayor Ross. How many candidates will the ad hoc committee put forward? Is it just the one top candidate, or will it be How much will the rest of council interface with potential candidates?
Typically, what we have seen is that there is, I mean, I'm hoping things have changed with, employment. We're seeing an uptick in applications. So typically, you would see about 7 to 10 final applicants, and then through this selection process, you would meet those people and have an opportunity to interview.
All of council would.
It depends on how we set up the interviews. Usually, it's the final 2 or 3 that
Okay,
you would
two
meet with.
or 3, but it won't be just one brought forward from the ad hoc to consider?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, so once again, going back in the memory bank, so yeah, there was a field, and that interview team helped parse the field down to, and I believe council looked at 6 as a full body when we did the sets of interviews, and they were kind of extensive. We did it over a number of occasions, but,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered. Just one, you mentioned that we've used Peckham McKinney before. Can you just elaborate on just our past experience with them?
Absolutely. So Peckham and McKinney, we've used them for both the finance director and the community development director. Having worked with multiple organizations and agencies that do recruitments for a city manager level of position, I found that Peckham and McKinney is the most responsive and provides excellent candidates, and it's witnessed by whom we've hired.
Great, thank you. That's helpful to know that we've used them and have 2 that are currently here.
Yes,
that,
correct.
are- Thank you.
And then, Ms. Levy, how broad of a net do we cast in something like this? This is a national search, a state search? What do you think?
This is absolutely a national.
A national search, okay,
Yes.
very good. All right, does anyone else have any questions? And Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you. Just mine, my question is, how much is it costing us to hire this recruiter?
For this particular recruitment, it would be between $28,000 and $30,000.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions from council, I'll entertain public comment. Are there any public comment slips turned in? And we're not Zooming, is that correct?
Correct. Mr. Mayor, no Zoom, and there are no public comment slips.
Okay, very good. So back to the council. I'll entertain Mr. Jordan. That's what I'll do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some comments, and then I'm sure there's some playing to do. However this works out, I think just how you've done it in the past may not necessarily want to be the way you frame this now or in the future, because life changes so rapidly and drastically. But I really see as key to this process, and I think it's in that second box on the timeline, that we really don't cut corners on involving community stakeholders and also department heads. So I really, I don't want to get into like a public forum type of question thing, because it's mine and your decision on what we do. It's a very personal decision. But I think it would be great to make sure that we have some type of structured process where somebody is reaching out to the business sector, the social service sector, the equity sector, the whatever else, and in a survey or something like that, or one brief meeting or phone interviews to get their input on what a successful city manager and management of the city and the role they play looks like to them, because it's often not all that clear to me what it looks like to them too. So I think that would be great. And then I'm not sure I understood the answer, but I'm also concerned at the end of the process too, that the a ad hoc subcommittee does not drastically narrow down the number of top choices for council to look at least, maybe not interview, but to look at and talk about amongst ourselves, and then you narrow it down to 3 or whatever. That may all be precluded on however many people actually apply and what the base looks like, I get it. But, in a best-case scenario, if you have 50 people apply and you have 12 strong candidates and your goal is to get it down to 3, I'd appreciate, wherever I am in this, being part of that discussion on the 12, just so you're seeing the same data the ad hoc committee is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, and just once again, going back to when we did Mr. Casey's recruitment, we did exactly what you're talking about, Mr. Jordan, and we had, like I said, ex officios from the city, people from the county, executives around town, all were part of that search and interview committee, made recommendations. The ad hoc committee is pretty much a liaison between the HR director and council, but it is the full council who will make those really important decisions, so. Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I support both of these actions and the recruiter that is suggested. I might want to suggest for the ad hoc committee, because of this importance, that it be mayor, mayor pro tem, and an alternate also of the next mayor pro tem, whoever's in line next, just in case we have attendance issues or any other issues coming up, that there be either a 3-member or an alternate to that.
Well, to that point, I'll have to go to Ms. Connect for this, but to that point, this could very well go beyond the first of the year and involve, in fact, the next mayor pro tem. Ms. Connect, if there is an alternate, does that then become a Brown Act committee? We just remain as an ad hoc, and this will be just to this recruitment phase.
Mr. Mayor, I believe if there are 3 members, it'd still be an ad hoc committee. So we could have the mayor, the mayor pro tem, and an alternate. Would not become a Brown Act committee, it'd still be ad hoc. And then, the alternate, if it was, but I'm not sure the alternate would, I don't know if the mayor pro tem the next mayor pro tem is known at this point in time, so.
I don't know. Anybody standing up? I don't know.
If I could follow up, if we do keep up with the tradition of rotating through mayor pro tems, then I think
Okay.
we would.
Well, I was just thinking, if, to Ms. Sneddon's point, in terms of continuity, if an alternate were, and I don't know how much intimate detail there is. To me, it's not like these subcommittees making these determinations as much as, once again, just staying on top of the process and being the communication link between HR and council. So I don't think that this, as I recall, the subcommittee or the ad hoc committee wasn't actually even part of the whittling down process as much as they were just the communication link. Do I have that right?
Correct. I would be communicating directly with you. The recruiter would be communicating directly with you if there were specific questions or with the posting or anything of that nature. But you will all be contacted as far as the details that you're looking for in a candidate.
And
So
the
this
interview
is-
team, as I recall, once again, did some of the triage work.
Correct.
Because obviously, there's a fair amount of candidates and some really you just don't want to spend a lot of time on necessarily. There's things that are disqualifying people right away. So,
And the recruiter will actually go through and take those, we'll talk to people, but we'll also whittle it down ahead of time for you. And then the panels will do further whittling and make their recommendation.
and we'll be checking in with that panel from time to time during the process as well? Okay. That's kind of what I remember. Anyway, Mr. Friedman.
I'm open either way to the alternate. It does make it a little more complicated. The one thing I would have a question about is if you have 3 council members, then it gets into some type of Brown Act issues because those 3 council members would be essentially one block, and then if there was, the rest of us out there could not have any communication with them if we chose to discuss it amongst ourselves. So, as I understand, is that accurate or?
Disconnect.
Councilmember Freeman, I think you're right, it does get more complicated. It's much simpler to keep it to 2. And, you don't need an ad hoc committee, right? So you can always not have that. I think as Ms. Levy suggests, that the purpose of the ad hoc committee is really just to do some of the work. to do some of the liaison and help with some of the workload. But you don't really, you've got a recruiter, you've got your great HR department. A lot of this is going to come to you anyway. It's just really to weed out some of the candidates. Maybe we could get a little more definition as to what the purpose of the ad hoc is, but you actually, you could go without one, or you could see how the process goes, and then if you think you need one, appoint one later.
Right, as I remember, once again, it's not an executive committee, it's not making decisions. However, there are desires, for
Right.
example, and expectations of the council that need to be also communicated to the search committee and to the recruiter.
And
Say,
perhaps
what
the
is it we
entire
would like to see
council
from our
wants to-
perspective as well, so they can balance that out. And as I recall, that is kind of the, part of the chore of the ad hoc, like I say, the mayor pro tem, which is, what you have to do.
So I would just
That would be correct.
say, well, if my memory serves me, then the next, if we were to go in that, I mean, we haven't voted on it, obviously, but if we were to go through tradition, Councilmember Jordan would be the next mayor pro tem. But since this is an ad hoc committee, I don't even know if you would need an alternate. So if we're going to go for 3, we should just go for 3 rather than have an alternate. And just have, in this case, it would be the mayor, our current mayor pro tem, Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, and then have Councilmember Jordan. If we wanted to go in that, and just make, no need to do alternate, because then that gets, well, what does an alternate do? So just, if we want to have expanded to 3, then those would be my recommendation, or we could leave it either way, but one of those 2 options.
Ms. Levy, do you have a?
Yes, Mayor and council members, I also want to elucidate you that the ad hoc committee will actually work with the candidate on negotiation processes. So we'll be making the offer, we'll be talking about terms and conditions of employment. So I wanted to also clarify that as far as selection and what that means.
All right. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the $30,000 to $40,000 we're going to spend on this recruiter, where's that coming from?
Typically, that would come from the department that is doing the hiring.
Yeah.
So HR?
It would actually come from city administrator's budget.
Gotcha, okay. So from my recollection of when the previous mayor and I went through this process, when Paul Casey retired, our main role was to make a decision on which recruiter to go with, but it sounds like that step's already been taken care of. So then the following decision that was put upon the mayor and I was to vet the final candidate that was selected. And so right now I'm just kind of wondering, well, I guess now that I'm thinking out loud, I see the purpose on hiring a recruiter because it takes away any type of favoritism that we might have, even in our departments. It's more of an objective, I guess, process. But I would recommend having an alternate for sure, because I do remember that in the process there was some understandings and also some disagreements. So having a third person from the council there, I think would be just.
Well, once again, any kind of negotiation would be advisory back to council. No, the 3 people can't ratify anything on their own. They have to come back to council for that ratification. So that was, and you recall Ms. Harmon and I worked on that capacity before. So speaking of Ms. Harmon, there she is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say, I think I take Councilmember Gutierrez's point, so I appreciate that. We're not beholden to the sort of historical way of appointing the ad hoc, that it has to be the mayor and the mayor pro tem. And I wondered if it might just, from a ease and efficiency and scheduling and staying nimble, it might be better to just go with 2 people. I mean, I'm wondering kind of we seem to be making this very complicated, and that's a little bit of a concern for me. Like, maybe we don't need to do that, but if the 3 people we're talking about think they can schedule and get this moving quickly in line with the timeline, then 3 sounds good to me. I just had turned on my light to say that it seems like we might be overthinking it, and maybe we could just,
I agree with you on the
different.
simplicity part. To Ms. Snedden's point, though, we are going to be likely in a transition period between the 2 pro tems, is the only concern. So, because normally I think exactly like you do, Ms. Harmon, just do with the 2 and be done with it. But I don't know, and I don't know if I'd ask Ms. Connect or Ms. Levy if you had a take on that in terms of complexity versus simplicity and expedition, because we're really not, the committee itself, the ad hoc committee is not doing the heavy lifting. That's to the professionals. And so, oh, come on, one of you guys has something to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not that familiar with the process to know the complexity versus the simplicity, but I think having 2 members will make scheduling and the discussion simpler, as opposed to 3 members. And, obviously, you avoid some of the potential Brown Act issues with 2 members. And I do think we want to, if we are talking about an alternate versus a regular member, we want to make that clear today, whether it would be an alternate or a regular 3-member ad hoc
Because that would
committee.
actually take care of both problems, would it not? We'd be able to have the ease of scheduling with 2, but the alternate would then be there, and
In
then
case.
would be the successor pro tem.
Correct, right, you could
So that
step
might be why
in
that
if
idea could work.
that idea could work. That idea could work, correct.
Okay. Ms. Snedden. Oh, you're done. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Ross, and I think this is an important discussion, so thank you. I think if it's going to be 2 for simplicity and without an alternate, then I might suggest the mayor and the next pro tem for continuity, just start it now, and also as we're heading into sort of different election cycles, there's continuity in the next mayor pro tem through that. So that would be my suggestion if we stated 2, and I'm not sure what council will is, but I'm just concerned with attendance issues or scheduling issues, that we set that at the beginning.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll make the motion and see where it goes. So I would move that we retain an outside recruiter who specializes in local government executive recruiting and establish an ad hoc committee to work with that agency and HR, that committee consisting of Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Jordan.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Friedman. Any further discussion on the motion? I mean, I feel a little chagrined because Ms. Gutierrez is not here. I don't know if there's, because it has traditionally been the mayor and the mayor pro tem. But that being said, that is the motion of council. Any further discussion? Mr. Gutierrez.
Is there any way I can convince you to go with the 3-person ad hoc so that we don't exclude Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez?
Add it as an alternate? Was that the solution that was preferred? I'm a little confused between alternate or no alternate.
Well, let me go back to my point was, rather than have a 3-person committee that we have to schedule and whatnot, if we were going to have 3 active members with the upcoming pro tem as a 3rd, the alternate model would work better than doing a 3-person thing, which is a scheduling nightmare. So, or not a scheduling nightmare, but it's problematic sometimes. I'll go either way. I'd rather not have a 3-person body per se, but the 2 plus an alternate, I can see, mostly because of the time of year we're doing this. And like I said, I anticipate this taking us into the new year.
Honorable Mayor, if I may interject.
Oh, Mr. Doimus.
Just, thank you. Just due to actually my experience being part of this process, as long as it's 3 or less is fine. You don't necessarily have to call it a committee. It's just the appointment of either 2 or 3 individuals. Where the heavy lifting is required is when a selection has been made, There would be obviously negotiations on a contract. Eventually, the mayor would be the person signing the contract, but it would be discussion of the terms that want to do that, the back and forth. That's where 3 or 2 people are made. As Ms. Levy stated, that this is one of 2 positions under the charter where the city council appoints. So the entire council is involved in that process. The interview panels will be getting all that information. So really at the end, where the heavy lifting, as everyone talks about, comes into this is the negotiation aspect. So it's really more of, instead of a committee, kind of appointing a 2 or 3 member negotiating team from the council. So either way is fine on that.
And then, Mr. Doimus, as far as the negotiations go, does the team go in with authority from council before they go into the negotiation?
Yes, usually what would occur is when a final selection is made after the process, and probably be 2 or more closed sessions, because it's allowed under the Brown Act, because this is consideration of appointment. And so that would be occurring when we make the final selection. And within that meeting, all council will vote about the authority limit, and then you would begin the negotiation.
Right, so back to Ms. Levy's point, we really are just the conduit as opposed to a decision-making body as an ad hoc.
A conduit for negotiations, correct.
Okay, very good. Ms. Harmon, are you done with your point? Okay, then Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to stay off the horse in this race, but happy to do the work. What I really wanted to ask is, are we also determining today to pick Peckham and McKinney, or are we just authorizing you guys to go out and find somebody?
The contract would have to come either, depending upon the amount of it, come back to council for
Oh, so it
final
does, okay.
approval. So we are not
So we're just letting
executing a
you
contract.
go
Correct.
bring back who you'd like to do. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Friedman.
Ms. Connect or Mr. Doimus, just to follow up on the alternate or third person, and I think we're almost there, is do all 3 members have to be present? If a meeting is scheduled and say something happens and someone can't make the meeting, two could do the job. So you ideally have 3, but if one person couldn't make it, then you could go forward with 2.
Sure. Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, since, like, again, it's not a Brown Act meeting or anything else, it's just negotiations. If one person can't make it and 2 can be there as part of the back and forth negotiation, that's absolutely, it can even be 1, as long as someone's there facilitating the offers and hearing the back and forth on it.
Right. Then I would feel more comfortable having all 3. One, there is a tradition because we're also setting a precedent if we were to do that, and this could have ramifications down the line in the future where they look back at it. So I think having the current mayor pro tem and the next in line, and not an alternate, but just all 3, and then they can work out on their scheduling. And if you're open
I'll
to that.
amend my motion to reflect that.
And I support that amendment.
Okay, and Ms. Connect, if you would.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. So you amended your motion to include a third, but you didn't state who? Or
I amended the motion to include
Herman?
Mayor, the Mayor Pro Tem, and Councilmember Jordan.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Does everybody understand the motion? May we have the vote, please?
Yes, to repeat the motion here, motion by Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman, to retain an outside recruiter who specializes in local government executive recruiting and establish an ad hoc committee to work with the recruiting agency and human resources, with the committee consisting of Mayor Rouse, Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez, and Councilmember Jordan. Okay? Go ahead and vote, please.
Oh, do you need us, I need to do Alejandro's?
I think, let's see. Councilmember Jordan, yes, there you go.
Okay. Passes unanimously with all members present, Alejandro Gutierrez absent. And thank you very much. We'll be back at 2:00.